Imagine for a moment a world without your smartphone, your car, or even the electricity that powers your home. Think about a time when almost everything people owned was made by hand, slowly and carefully, right in their own village. This was the world for most of human history. Then, something incredible happened. It was a change so big, so powerful, it completely reshaped how we live, work, and think. We call this monumental shift the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't a war with soldiers and battles, but a revolution of machines, ideas, and energy. It was the moment humanity learned to build things on a massive scale. And folks, it changed. So, what is industrialization? At its heart, it's the process of a society moving from a farming-based, hands-on economy to one centered on manufacturing and machine production. Instead of a single person spending a whole day weaving one blanket, a machine could suddenly make dozens in the same amount of time. This shift from hand power to machine power was like discovering a new superpower. It allowed us to create more goods, faster and cheaper than ever before. This wasn't just about making new gadgets. It was a fundamental rewiring of human civilization, impacting every single aspect of daily life, from what people ate to where they lived. Why does this matter to us today on this fine day of June 26th, 2025? Because we are living in the world that the Industrial Revolution built. The very fabric of our modern society, our sprawling cities, our global economy, the jobs we do, the technology we rely on, can all be traced back to this explosive period of innovation that began a few centuries ago. Understanding this revolution is like reading the instruction manual for our own world. It helps us appreciate the conveniences we enjoy, but also to understand the complex challenges like pollution and inequality that were born from this same powerful transformation. Grasping the story of industrialization is more than a history lesson. It's a way to understand the very rhythm of our modern existence. It's a story of incredible human creativity, ambition, and problem-solving. It's also a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of rapid change. By exploring how this revolution unfolded, we can see the patterns of innovation and disruption that continue to shape our lives. From the steam engine to the internet, the core principles are the same. A new idea or a new tool emerges, and the world is never quite the same again. Let's dive in and explore how it all happened. So, what lit the fuse for this incredible explosion of change? The Industrial Revolution didn't just appear out of thin air. It was more like a perfect storm of different ingredients, all coming together at the right time, primarily in Great Britain in the 18th century. One of the biggest factors was a revolution in agriculture. Farmers developed new techniques like crop rotation and selective breeding, and new tools like the seed drill. This meant they could grow much more food with far fewer people. With a surplus of food, the population began to grow, and fewer people were needed to work on farms, creating a large available workforce. Another key ingredient was the availability of natural resources. Great Britain was sitting on a gold mine, or rather, a coal and iron mine. Coal was the wonder fuel of the age. It burned hotter and longer than wood, providing the immense energy needed to power the new machines that were being invented. Iron was the perfect material for building these machines, as well as the factories to house them and the railways to connect them. Having vast, easily accessible deposits of both coal and iron gave Britain a tremendous head start, providing the raw power and the strong building blocks for this new industrial age. Then there was the spirit of innovation and the political climate. The Enlightenment had encouraged scientific thinking, curiosity, and a belief in progress. Inventors and entrepreneurs were celebrated, and the government supported their efforts with things like patent laws, which protected their ideas. Britain also had a stable political system and a vast colonial empire that provided both a source of raw materials, like cotton from India and the Americas, and a captive market to sell finished goods to. This combination of scientific curiosity, economic ambition, and political stability created a fertile ground where the seeds of industry could sprout and flourish. Finally, you can't overlook the role of transportation. Before the revolution, moving heavy goods was slow and expensive, usually relying on horses or river barges. But Britain was in the middle of a canal-building frenzy. These man-made waterways were the superhighways of their time, allowing for the cheap and efficient transport of coal, iron and other bulk goods to the new factory centres. This improved infrastructure was the circulatory system of the burgeoning industrial economy, connecting the mines to the factories and the factories to the markets. All these factors, more food, more people, abundant resources, new ideas and better transport, came together to kickstart the Industrial Revolution. If the Industrial Revolution was a rock concert, then the inventors were the rock stars, and their inventions were the hit songs that everyone was talking about. This era was defined by a breathtaking burst of human ingenuity, with one invention often leading directly to the next. The revolution really got rolling in the textile industry. For centuries, spinning thread and weaving cloth were slow, manual tasks. Then came inventions like the spinning jenny and the water frame, which allowed a single worker to spin many threads at once. These machines dramatically sped up production, but they needed a new kind of power source. Enter the most iconic invention of the age, the steam engine. While early versions existed, it was James Watt's improvements in the 1770s that turned the steam engine into a true workhorse. By harnessing the power of heated water vapor, steam, Watt created a machine that could provide reliable, powerful, and continuous rotary motion. This was a game changer. Suddenly, factories no longer had to be built next to fast-flowing rivers to turn a water wheel. They could be built anywhere, as long as they had access to coal and water. The steam engine was the heart of the new industrial world, pumping life into factories, mines, and eventually transportation. The impact of steam power was truly revolutionary. It didn't just change where factories were built, it changed what they could do. The steam engine could power enormous looms that wove cloth faster than an army of weavers. It could be used to pump water out of deep coal mines, allowing access to more of that precious fuel. It was the engine that powered the engine of progress itself. This single invention unleashed a torrent of new possibilities, making other innovations possible and accelerating the pace of change to a speed that was previously unimaginable. It was the technological superstar of its time, and the hits just kept on coming. The newfound ability to produce massive quantities of iron led to innovations in everything from construction to transportation. In the early 1800s, inventors like Richard Trevithick and George Stephenson figured out how to put a steam engine on wheels, creating the steam locomotive. This gave birth to the railways, a transportation network that could move goods and people faster and farther than ever before. The world suddenly felt smaller. The combination of steam power, iron production, and the railway system created a powerful feedback loop, with each innovation driving the others forward and fundamentally remaking the landscape of the world. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change how things were made, it completely changed where and how people lived. Before this era, most people lived in small rural villages, and their lives were dictated by the seasons and the sun. They were farmers, blacksmiths, or weavers, working in or near their own homes. But the new factories, powered by steam and filled with machines, needed a massive number of workers all in one place. This created a powerful magnetic pull, drawing millions of people away from the countryside and into rapidly growing urban centers. This mass movement of people is one of the most significant legacies of the revolution. This shift was a profound social upheaval. For generations, families had lived on the same land, part of a close-knit community. Now, driven by the hope of steady wages and a better life, or pushed by the loss of farm work due to agricultural improvements, people packed up their belongings and moved to the cities. Places that were once small towns, like Manchester and Liverpool in England, exploded into sprawling, bustling industrial metropolises in just a few decades. This urbanization happened at a dizzying pace, faster than anyone could have planned for, creating entirely new kinds of communities and entirely new kinds of problems. Life in these new industrial cities was a world away from the quiet rhythm of the village. The clock, not the sun, now governed the day. Work was no longer seasonal, but a relentless, year-round routine. People lived in densely packed neighborhoods, often in poorly constructed housing built quickly and cheaply to accommodate the flood of new arrivals. Streets were crowded, noisy, and often unsanitary. For many, this was their first experience living alongside thousands of strangers, creating a sense of both exciting anonymity and profound isolation. The very definition of community was being rewritten in the shadow of the factory smokestacks. This new urban environment also changed the structure of the family. On the farm, the family worked together as an economic unit. In the city, work was something that happened outside the home, in the factory or the mine. Men, women, and even very young children left their homes to work long hours for a wage. This separation of home and work was a new concept for most people. Daily life was transformed from the food people ate, often bought rather than grown, to the way they spent their limited free time. The Great Migration to the cities reshaped not just the physical landscape, but the very social and domestic fabric of society. While it's easy to focus on the dark, smoky factories, it's crucial to remember that the Industrial Revolution brought about some incredible positive changes that we still benefit from today. For the first time in history, goods that were once luxuries for the rich became accessible to a much broader segment of the population. Think about clothing. Before industrialization, a new set of clothes was a major expense. With machine-made textiles, prices plummeted. People could afford to own more than one or two outfits, improving both hygiene and comfort. This mass production of consumer goods, from pottery to furniture, led to a significant rise in the overall standard of living for many. The revolution also sparked the growth of a new social class, the middle class. This group was made up of factory owners, inventors, engineers, merchants, doctors, and lawyers. They weren't born into aristocratic wealth, but they earned their position through skill, education, and entrepreneurial spirit. This new middle class had disposable income and leisure time, which created demand for new services like education, entertainment, and travel. They built comfortable homes, valued hard work, and became a powerful political and cultural force, shaping the values and aspirations of modern society. Their rise demonstrated a new kind of social mobility based on merit and wealth rather than birthright. Furthermore, the innovations of the Industrial Revolution had a ripple effect that spurred incredible advancements in other fields. The need to solve practical problems in engineering and manufacturing drove scientific research forward. The development of railways and steamships not only moved goods, but also ideas, allowing knowledge to spread faster than ever. Advances in iron production led to new architectural possibilities, like iron bridges and eventually the skeletons of early skyscrapers. The wealth generated by industry also funded public works, including universities, libraries, and museums, which helped to educate the public and foster even more innovation for generations to come. Perhaps one of the most significant long-term benefits was the creation of economic opportunity on an unprecedented scale. While factory work was grueling, for many people who left subsistence farming, it offered the prospect of a steady, reliable wage. This was a powerful lure. The economic dynamism of the industrial age created vast new fortunes and industries, laying the groundwork for the modern capitalist economy. This system, driven by competition and innovation, has lifted billions of people out of poverty around the world and has fueled the technological progress that defines our lives today, from medical breakthroughs to space exploration. Section 6. The other side of the coin, the human cost of industry. For every story of a successful inventor or a rising middle-class family, there were thousands of stories of hardship and struggle. The dark side of the Industrial Revolution was very dark indeed, especially for the working class who powered the factories and dug the coal. Working conditions were often appalling and incredibly dangerous. Factories were noisy, poorly ventilated, and filled with massive, unprotected machinery. A moment of distraction could lead to a lost limb or even death. Workers, including women and children, toiled for 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, for wages that were barely enough to survive on. Children were especially exploited during this period. Because of their small size, they were often hired for dangerous jobs like cleaning under active machinery or crawling through narrow tunnels in coal mines. They worked the same long hours as adults but were paid a fraction of the wage. This widespread child labor robbed millions of their childhood, their health, and their chance for an education. It was a brutal reality of the early industrial economy, one that took decades of struggle and reform to change. The sight of exhausted children emerging from a factory after a long shift became a powerful symbol of the human cost of progress. Living conditions in the rapidly growing cities were just as grim as the working conditions. Families were crammed into tiny, poorly built apartments in tenement buildings that lacked basic amenities like running water or sanitation systems. Overcrowding was rampant, and streets were often filled with garbage and sewage. These unsanitary conditions were a perfect breeding ground for diseases like cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis, which swept through the working-class neighborhoods with devastating effect. The dream of a better life in the city often turned into a nightmare of poverty, filth, and disease for those at the bottom of the social ladder. In response to these harsh realities, workers began to organize. They formed early trade unions to demand better wages, safer conditions, and shorter hours. These efforts were often met with fierce resistance from factory owners and the government, leading to violent clashes and strikes. The struggle between labor and capital became a defining feature of the industrial age. The profound social inequality, the vast gap between the immense wealth of the factory owners and the desperate poverty of their workers, created deep social tensions and sparked new political ideas like socialism that challenged the very foundations of the new industrial order. Section 7. A world transformed, the revolution goes global. The Industrial Revolution was not content to stay in one place. Like the steam from its own engines, it soon expanded beyond the shores of Great Britain, spreading its methods, machines, and social changes across the globe. The first to follow were nations in Western Europe, like Belgium, France, and Germany, as well as the United States. These countries had many of the same ingredients as Britain: access to coal and iron, a growing population, and governments eager to modernize. Industrial spies, ambitious entrepreneurs, and skilled workers carried the new technology and knowledge across borders, helping to kickstart industrialization in their home countries. In the United States, industrialization took hold with incredible speed and on a massive scale. With vast natural resources, a flood of immigrant labor, and a culture of invention, the US became an industrial powerhouse by the late 19th century. American innovations, like the concept of interchangeable parts pioneered by Eli Whitney and the assembly line perfected by Henry Ford, took mass production to a whole new level. The construction of a vast railway network stitched the country together, creating a single enormous national market that fueled even more industrial growth and turned the US into a leading global economic force. The spread of industrialization, however, was not always a simple story of shared progress. It also created a new global power dynamic. Industrialized nations with their powerful economies and advanced military technology began to exert immense influence over non-industrialized regions in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. This period of new imperialism was driven, in part, by the industrial appetite for raw materials, like rubber, oil, and cotton, and the need for new markets to sell manufactured goods. The industrial powers used their strength to build vast colonial empires, reshaping the economies and societies of colonized peoples to serve their own industrial needs. This global spread created a deep and lasting division in the world. A gap opened up between the industrialized core nations and the less developed periphery nations, a division that in many ways still exists today. While some countries, like Japan, successfully managed to industrialize rapidly in the late 19th century to maintain their independence, many others found themselves locked into a dependent economic relationship with the industrial powers. The global legacy of the Industrial Revolution is therefore complex. It connected the world through trade and technology, but it also created new forms of inequality and exploitation on a global scale. Section 8. Echoes of the Past, the Revolution's Long Shadow. The smokestacks may have cooled in many of the original industrial cities, but the Industrial Revolution is not just a chapter in a history book. We are living every day with its consequences, both good and bad. The most obvious legacy is the technological world we inhabit. The very idea that human ingenuity can solve problems and constantly improve our lives is a direct inheritance from that era. The computer you're using, the global supply chains that deliver your food, and the medical science that keeps you healthy are all descendants of the scientific and engineering mindset that was supercharged by the revolution. Our world of constant innovation is the long shadow of those first tinkers and inventors. The structure of our modern society is also a direct result of industrialization. Most of us live in or near cities, work for a wage in a job outside the home, and organize our lives by the clock, all patterns established during that time. The political debates that still rage today about the role of government in the economy, the rights of workers, and the gap between the rich and the poor have their roots in the social conflicts that erupted in the 19th century. The system of global capitalism, with its incredible power to create wealth and its potential for instability and inequality, is the economic engine that was forged in the fires of the first factories. However, the revolution also left us with some of our planet's most pressing challenges. The Industrial Revolution was powered by burning fossil fuels, first coal, and then oil and gas. This kicked off the massive release of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that has led to the climate change we face today. The industrial model of taking resources, making products, and then throwing them away has created enormous problems with pollution and waste. We are now grappling with the long-term environmental bill for 2 centuries of industrial activity, a challenge that requires a new revolution in how we power our world and use its resources. This brings us to what some call the 4th Industrial Revolution. Today we are living through another period of profound and rapid change, driven by digital technology, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology. Just as the steam engine transformed the 19th century, these new technologies are reshaping our economies, our jobs, and our societies. Understanding the first industrial revolution, its triumphs, its failures, its social disruptions, and its unintended consequences, gives us a vital map for navigating the changes we face today. It teaches us to be optimistic about innovation, but also cautious about its human and environmental impact. Section 9, Conclusion, Our Industrial World, Our Future. From the first spark of a steam engine to the intricate global network of the 21st century, the Industrial Revolution stands as one of the most transformative periods in human history. It was a time of brilliant invention and brutal exploitation, of rising cities and rising inequality, of unprecedented progress and unforeseen problems. It fundamentally altered our relationship with work, with nature, and with each other. It put humanity on a new trajectory, one defined by mass production, technological acceleration, and global interconnectedness. We are all, in a very real sense, children of this revolution. The story of industrialization is not over. It continues to unfold every day, in every new factory built, every new technology invented, and every debate we have about our economic and environmental future. The core tensions of that era, between progress and tradition, between individual profit and social well-being, between economic growth and environmental sustainability, are still the central tensions of our time. The challenges we face, from climate change to automation and job displacement, are new versions of the challenges faced by those who lived through the first wave of industrial change. Thinking about the Industrial Revolution encourages us to ask big, important questions. How can we harness the incredible power of technology to create a better world for everyone, not just a select few? How do we ensure that progress doesn't come at the cost of our planet's health? What are our responsibilities to each other in a world that is more connected, yet in some ways more divided than ever before? The lessons from the past are clear. Innovation is powerful, but it is not neutral. It is up to us to guide it with wisdom, empathy, and a clear-eyed view of its potential consequences. So the next time you flip a light switch, ride in a car, or use a device built by a machine thousands of miles away, take a moment to think about the long, incredible, and complicated journey that made it possible. We live in a world built on the foundation of the Industrial Revolution. Now, it is our generation's turn to build the next chapter. It's our turn to innovate, to solve problems, and to decide what kind of world we want to create with the powerful tools we have inherited. The revolution continues, and folks, its future is in our hands. Consider the past, and let's build a better future. It's going to be exciting.